on, we're now recording Zoom, and I am now recording on my laptop as well, and you're recording on Audacity.
Indeed.
Check, check, check. Done, done, done. All right.
Okay. Oh, wait, hold. Yeah. Okay, good. Cool. All right. Ready?
I guess so, yeah.
All right.
Was that confident?
Yeah, that sounded good. That's a good air of confidence.
Cool.
I think I'm gonna keep that in. So, all right, I'm keeping that in. All right, everybody, welcome to the Breaking the Barrier podcast. My name is Andrew.
My name's Zach. Citius, Altius, Fortius. This is the podcast that helps you to go faster, higher, and stronger than you ever thought possible. That's right. This week we're talking Olympics in honor of the postponed Olympics.
Yeah. Wait, what did you say in the beginning? What was that?
Citius, Altius, Fortius. It means...
Sidious, as in Star Wars?
No, Citius with a C-I-T, Citius. Yeah, it's Latin for faster, higher, stronger. The motto of the Olympics.
Why didn't you do it in Greek? I would have been more impressed if you did it in Greek.
I can do it with a really insulting Greek accent, but it's probably not what we want. I'm being completely honest.
That's fair enough. That's funny. Okay, cool. Yeah, rock on.
Yeah.
So wait, what did it mean again? Sorry.
It means faster, higher, stronger. It's as if these aren't in the show notes that I sent you, Andrew.
Are they?
Yeah,
I don't know. Dude. Oh, there they are.
Do you think I come up with this stuff on the fly?
All I do, dude, I just put in my stuff. I don't read your stuff unless you specifically tell me read this, and you didn't say that. You didn't say read the Latin, so I didn't do it.
Listeners, we teased last week that we were going to do a whole bunch of research for this episode. Obviously, that didn't translate into preparation and alignment, but that's fine. We think we've got a good one for you.
We did do a lot of research between the two of us. We've got some really awesome facts, milestones, figures, and a lot of cool moments of the Olympics over the last, basically, couple thousand years, really.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Olympics. We're going to run through, in honor of, when we put this episode up, what should have been the closing ceremony for the Japan Olympics, which are now postponed. Yep. We're going to go back and remember a lot of the moments from... I mean, it's honestly, it's amazing when you start going through the history of the Olympics, how many great moments there have been. And we've just limited ourselves to sort of things that have happened on the track in most cases. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so, like, in my personal research, when I was looking up this stuff, there's so much stuff that I really wanted to talk about. But, I thought maybe we could do this in a 2-part episode but then I was like, let's just keep it there. And if we want to revisit, we can. But man, there's so much cool stuff that's happened over the course of the Olympics, the Olympiad. It's just amazing.
Yeah. So what that means is, listeners, at some point you are going to get upset with us because we've forgotten something that's near and dear to your heart. And when that happens, make sure you jump on Breaking the Barrier social media, be it Instagram at Breaking the Barrier Podcast, Facebook at Breaking the Barrier Podcast, or our Facebook community, which is in groups /Breaking the Barrier Running, and let us know which Olympic moment did we not talk about enough or probably miss completely.
Absolutely. And that raises a good point. Yeah. If there's ever anything that you want us to talk about, just shoot us up. Hit us up. Don't shoot us up. That's very different.
Yeah.
Don't do that. So there's actually, speaking of different social media platforms, I'm going to start putting our episodes up on YouTube. So Zach and I have been recording the last couple of episodes on Zoom, so you can be able to see the video. If you have ever wanted to see our pretty faces, this is going to be your chance. I don't have the URL yet, the link, but probably within the next week or so, I'll set it up and you'll see at least the last couple of episodes up there on YouTube if you ever want to try a different medium listening to the podcast. And just a great way to comment, talk about what you want. Give us a like, give us a subscribe when I give you the link.
Yeah, if you ever want to see Andrew's face go through a gamut of emotions as he sort of goes, what's Zach talking about? And then starts to panic as I go close to something that we probably shouldn't be talking about. And then the wave of relief that comes over here when we steer away from a train wreck, YouTube will finally give you all that.
Totally. We're like, yeah, totally.
So what that means is there might be a YouTube community, but what we always do as we start off the episode is give a shout out to people in the Facebook community who have been going above and beyond what they ever thought possible.
That's right. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to start off right away with AJ. So AJ, basically, okay, so actually before I get into that, I posed a question in the Facebook community. What, with everything that's negative right now in the world, what are the good things that you're looking forward to? What are the good things in your life? Because I think that's a really important thing to focus on while there's so much bad stuff happening, you've got to look at the good. So I posed this question in the Facebook community, and we got a few answers back, starting with AJ. So AJ had this to say: my niece is getting married in September, and I can't wait. Which is amazing. That, you know, it's great when you can have the families come together. So fun fact, spoiler alert, I think this is the first time that AJ's posted in the group. He's actually
Yay.
he's my uncle.
Oh,
He's
Uncle
my,
AJ.
basically, so long story short, he is my grandfather's son, but that's from a different marriage than my grandfather with my grandmother. So my grandparents got divorced, grandfather remarried, had AJ, so he's like half uncle, I think.
I think we
But
call that a long story long.
dude, you want to hear a long story? I'll give you a long story.
Welcome, AJ.
Yes, welcome AJ, and thank you so much for posting. Really, really glad to see you in the community. Robert had this to say. Robert said, I closed on my house yesterday, and now I live in a beautiful new one with my partner. Beautiful.
That's awesome.
That's amazing to me that people are still able to do anything with real estate right now.
Yeah, I know. Being able to have the mindset to be able to focus on something like that and make a big investment in your future and everything, and that feeling like scary mortgage, but also security. I've got a house. It's something that I own, and yeah, that's great.
New start, new life, new memories to make, and hopefully we leave some of the memories of 2020 behind.
Yeah.
So
So Steve Fraser, who we spoke about last week on the episode, who did the Appalachian Trail, he also posted again this week in terms of things that are making him feel good. And it was, I'm finally getting into shape and have my first baby due 1.5 months before my first race. Definitely thankful. Well done, Steve. It is always a great feeling, that feeling of expectation where you're sitting there going, have I done enough? Am I ready for that next race? And so knowing you've got that race on the calendar, you know, in a couple of months' time, that's fantastic. Yeah. Really keep focusing on that. That's what I took from your message there, is the key takeaway was focusing on the next race. Yeah.
And you know, it's just great that you're able to get in shape during this time as well. There's so many out there that I'm sure are wishing that they were doing that. And congratulations on your first baby. That's
kind of the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done.
Oh, you were joking and I missed it?
Yeah.
Over my head. Okay, cool.
That's why you need to be on the YouTube, people, to see that happen.
Yeah. That blank stare of Zach just went right over the baby thing, and cool.
I'm a jaded parent, so
I'm gonna go. Nice. So congratulations, Stephen, on all of that.
Yes.
Angela had this to say in the Facebook community. Angela said, gardening, river floats, time spent with my family, outdoor movie theaters, and summer skies. So that's what Angela's looking forward to, the good things in her life right now. That's amazing. I love an outdoor movie theater.
I'm going to assume she's in the Northern Hemisphere, because whilst it was a beautiful day today in Melbourne, it was cold. I don't think, Yeah,
and I don't think that they'd be open either.
No.
Because there's one over in the Botanical Gardens somewhere. I've been there. That was really cool.
They sometimes do that in summer, absolutely, but not right now. We can't do anything. No. Someone who can do something, though, is a long-term friend of the community, Dean. So Dean, who lives out of Melbourne, I believe, still in Victoria, but further away. I took my new trail shoes for a play in the bush this morning. You can't get much gooder than that. Which I agree. And he posted a photo. It looked like he'd actually taken the trail shoes out for a walk and just posed them discreetly, or scenically in front of some backgrounds there. So hopefully he wore them as well.
Pretty cool photo, actually.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like because they were a pair of Hokas, and I feel like that's an advertising shot for Hoka. So you should send that into Hoka there, Dean. Maybe they'll use it.
We take 10%.
Oh, absolutely. Of nothing.
Yep.
Or, there you go. And finally, Jennifer had this to say: I'm blessed to be able to homeschool all 4 of my kids this fall. I'm also able to keep up with my running, even though I have to get up super early to get my miles in every day. It's all about the little things, but blessed with what you have, and be happy for those who have more than you. Be blessed with what you have, sorry. But amazing message,
Great attitude. I'm not sure I would consider myself blessed to be homeschooling. So anyone who can turn that into a positive, Jennifer, I think is definitely going above and beyond what I think is possible. So well done. Yeah. So thanks to everyone who shouted out in the community about what is good right now. Look forward to featuring more of you in episodes in the future. Andrew, what have you been doing? I think you, before we jump into the Olympics thing, had a particular interaction with Simon the other day as you went to the shopping centre. What was that all about?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I went to Cole. I think we talked about how my Kohl's is in the Werribee Plaza. I was there the other day, and I'm walking to Kohl's, and apparently this is the same one that Simon uses. And I'm walking, and just see this body sort of stop off to my side and start staring me down. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And I look over, and it was just interesting because all I saw was his eyes, but I knew right away it was Simon. Because he's just Simon. For those of you who don't know, Simon's just got these really gentle eyes. He's just a kind-hearted dude, and you just know when he's around, right? He's got an awful sense of humor.
I was about to suggest, did you know it was him because he was yelling obscenities at you across the supermarket floor? Or
yeah, yeah. So Simon makes a lot of fun jokes, but
Simon also always wears a hat. So if he's got the hat
Yeah.
on and the mask, it is kind of like he's got the ninja thing. Yeah.
I have never seen the top of Simon's head ever.
He doesn't have one. No,
I didn't think he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
hat
Cool.
screws on like a Lego one. Yeah.
You're right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's weird. I've never, and I was thinking about. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was thinking about that while I was talking to him, when I should have been paying attention to what he was saying. I was thinking, I've never seen the top of your head. So I was like, does he have hair? I don't know.
Yes.
He has it was just
a little bit of hair. Yeah.
Does he?
Yeah.
Is it red, blonde? What is it? I feel like he's blonde.
Yeah, he's blonde.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. He's kind of like a boss baby.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
It was an interesting conversation. We were only there for about 5 minutes. We did the the elbow bump and everything. And we were just checking up on each other. How you doing? Great. And it was just interesting. We were both talking about, the state of things, obviously, and just what we're doing to stay positive. And the sort of message that came out from what we were talking was just like, look, we can't control what's going on. So we got to focus on the stuff that we can. And he was talking about his fitness, his running, staying as active and as normal as possible because it's not normal right now. But the things that we can control, we should, so that we can feel like it's not as dire as it maybe is. Yeah. And it was just really interesting the way that he phrased it, just control what you can, do what you can, rather than focusing on the stuff that you can't and focusing on everything that's wrong. I thought it was just a really good conversation, and it was great to catch up with him. It's funny, the only people that I have run into during lockdown outside of my house, other than Andy and Maria, if I drop groceries off of them while they were in the lockdown and everything, has been Simon and Shani. That's it. Shani I saw at one Kohl's over in Tarneet, Simon at the other one in the plaza.
Well, they know that you go to both of those Kohl's, so they've obviously split up to make sure they've got coverage. So whichever one you go to, if you start going to Woolies, it'll just completely mess with them. They'll have to get a third person in to start marking you.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess that would be the only logical step to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Yes, because I saw Simon was out this morning doing a run. I think he did the not park run, which is instead of running park run, we go and we run a 5K run, and then you post it as a not park run score. And so he went out and ran to his not park run course, did a not park run, and then ran home again. So he's definitely out there, clocking up 20Ks in the run.
Oh, dude, he's still smashing it. I mean, it's like, I know you hate Strava and all that stuff, but every now, like, I don't really check it for my own stuff anymore. I don't really give a shit about my own stuff on Strava. Like, I'm not obsessed with it anymore. I just kind of, like you, kind of went cold turkey. I didn't delete my account, but I will go on there and check what other people are doing, because that's the stuff I care about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great to see how many people are staying as active as basically ever. It's amazing. It's amazing to me.
It's great. And yeah, so well done everyone in the community. Well done everyone who we see or don't see. Just know that we're all still thinking of you, and we get so much out of whenever you share something with us and post something.
Absolutely.
Something also that inspires us is, looking back over the accomplishments of some of the great athletes that have competed in the Olympics over the last 100+ years. And that's what we're going to talk about now.
Totally.
I guess The Tokyo Olympics, which were meant to happen now, I mean, they were originally
No.
scheduled to take place between the 24th of July and the 9th of August. They were the 32nd Olympiads, and they have been postponed. They were postponed back in March 2020 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I remember some of the early episodes we had, Andrew, before we knew anything about COVID and were, making assumptions about what was going to happen and what wasn't going to happen. The Olympics was a big thing that we were thinking about, was how was that going to
Yeah,
be affected? And by the time March rolled around, which feels like forever ago now,
I know. It does, right?
it was shifted. So it will be held in 2021. And even though it's going to be in 2021, they're still going to call it Tokyo 2020, probably because they've printed a lot of
Yeah, I
marketing
mean,
material.
the marketing materials that have went into that, millions, I reckon,
Yeah.
and just you're not going to change it.
Somewhere there is a warehouse with like 50,000 t-shirts with Tokyo 2020
Oh
on
yeah,
it. They're sticking with
yeah,
that. Um,
yeah.
and this is the first time that the Olympic Games have been postponed rather than cancelled. And we'll talk about that as we run through the history of the
That's right.
Olympic Games. But
Yeah,
they have been cancelled before, and we'll
they
talk
have been
about that.
canceled twice before. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
which we'll get
so,
into.
so you started researching the Olympics. So Andrew has researched the Olympics chronologically, and so he's got some stuff to talk about year by year. I went a little different. I've picked out off the top of my head. I thought about the top 10 moments on the athletics track. I tried to limit it to things that happen on the track that sort of resonated with me. And so as Andrew runs through his sort of list of memories or milestones he's taken out of the Olympics, I'll jump in with the things that I really resonated with that were my top 10. The fun thing for you listeners is that Andrew's chronological order does not line up with my top 10 order, so I'll be jumping all over the place. But at the end, I'll recap in order what I thought my top 10 were.
There was a little bit of definitely emotional abuse towards Zach over Messenger the other day when he was like, "Yeah, mine aren't chronological." I was like, "Ah, okay. Well, you're not worth anything."
Well,
That's how that conversation went.
when I said we'll do an episode on the top 10 moments on the track in Olympics, I didn't think you meant years. And then you went and did like 20
I
years
meant
as well.
right from the start, man.
All right. Well, let's go all the way back to the start.
All right, let's do it. So, okay, starting off, 776 BC. So don't worry, I'm not going to go every 4 years from that time. 7-hour episode.
Which is a pity because 324 BC was a banger, from what I hear.
Oh, that was a good year.
Yeah.
Good year. So 776 BC, that in the Greek city of state of Elis, that marks the first officially recorded Olympics. It's believed, though, that the Olympics were at least 500 years old at this point. Now, initially, it was only foot races, but later the events included wrestling, boxing, chariot racing, which is cool,
Yeah.
and military competitions. I don't know what military I couldn't find too much about that, but I'm assuming some kind of strategy sort of stuff.
Yeah, maybe like capture the flag war games or,
paintball,
or spear, thingies. Yeah, I don't know. And that would have been all nude as well. Like back then, the athletes used to compete in the nude.
Yeah. So wrestling was definitely that would have been a lot of fun. So it's amazing how far we've come. I'm so glad that it's not nude anymore.
Yes.
But yeah, a chariot racing is definitely something I think they should bring back.
Yeah. Well, I think Peter might have something to say about that because I'm not sure the chariot racing was that great for the horses.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, neither is horse racing in general. We could do it with cars, Mad Max it.
Or male athletes could pull female athletes in the chariots.
Done.
Yeah.
I'll write a letter.
There's brainstorming. No bad ideas in brainstorming. Yeah.
None except for ours.
So then flash forward a couple of 1,000 years.
Yep. So now we're in 1896. So that was the first modernized Olympics held in Athens, Greece. And so that was basically organized by the International Olympic Committee created by Pierre de Coubertin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Don't know. Coubertin. I have no idea.
Yeah,
14 nations,
folks,
and
we are going to mispronounce a lot of names over the course of this episode.
Totally.
So just
it's
buckle in. Yeah.
So don't send us messages of hate. Thank you very much. 14 nations took place in this event, this Olympiad. 241 athletes were all male athletes. They were all European, with the exception of the USA. The winners at this time actually received a silver medal, while runners-up received a copper medal. I'm assuming that had to do with money and the cost of gold. And they were later apparently changed over to gold medals, but interesting fun fact.
Only 241 athletes. I mean, some of the countries these days send that many athletes on their own. So that, the Americans and the Russians and China, like their fields in the last couple of Olympians have been bigger than the entire first modern Olympics, which is just incredible.
Crazy. It's so incredible how much it's grown. Fast forward to 1900, and it takes place in Paris, France. For the first time, women could actually compete in the Olympics. So basically, couple thousand years onward, after 4 years after the first official, we finally have allowed women to compete in the Olympics.
Which is great. When you think about, and you'll see this, we'll talk about it over the course of the next hour or so, the timing that it's taken for women's events to actually find their way into the Olympics. But it only took them 4 years. It was the second Olympics that they went, let's get women involved. And so that was great. It shows that the world can move quickly when it has to, and when something's so bloody obvious, which is just, let them compete.
Yeah, exactly. Fast forwarding to 1916, the Olympic Games that were set for Berlin are the first Olympic Games to be canceled due to World War I. It's important to note that in 1940 and 1944, the Olympics have been canceled 3 times. They were canceled due to World War II. So there you go. And 1916, I feel like, is that not the same year also as the Spanish flu?
Possibly, yeah. I think it might be. Yeah, I think
it was right around that time, or 17.
Well, yeah. World War I was where I think we spoke about in one of the earlier COVID episodes, where influenza started to spread the most, because for the first time ever, we had a whole bunch of people together, which was fighting in the trenches. But then when people got sick, they were removed from the trenches, and suddenly influenza could travel great distances around the world as the troops moved around Europe. So yeah, I think it was probably around that time that the Spanish flu was quite prevalent.
Yeah. So there you go. Almost basically a little bit over 100 years since the first one canceled. We postponed this year due to something similar. So that's interesting. There you go. 1924, Chamonix, France, the first official Winter Olympics. There you go.
So for a long time, the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics were held in different places, obviously, but in the same year. Now, this is where, when I was thinking about, and this is where I did a bit of research, this is where my number 10 in my top 10 track moments comes in, because it was during this period of time that the Finnish distance runner Paavo Nurmi, who competed between 1920 and 1928 over 3 Olympics, won 12 medals, including 9 gold medals. And he is still the best all-time performing track and field athlete at the Olympic Games. So no other athlete has ever won more medals on the track than Finnish distance runner Paavo Nurmi. And that includes people like Carl Lewis, Usain Bolt. The best performing female athlete is the US sprinter Allyson Felix, and she's also won 9 medals.
Amazing. That do you know, for me, when I think of an Olympic athlete, like, I'm thinking, dude, you get your gold medal. These people they don't settle for a gold medal. They're like, dude, if we're gonna do it, I'm gonna go get more.
Yeah.
Which they're so hungry, which amazes me.
And I think we obviously see it in the pool. Like, I think some of the guys in the pool have won upwards of 20 Olympic medals because they can compete in so many different races. Whereas I think the track obviously impacts the body a little bit differently. So getting into the double digits is quite hard to do.
Very amazing. 1928, Amsterdam, Netherlands. The first year women were allowed to compete in track and field. After observing, though, the exhaustion from a few of the competitors after the 800-meter races, officials prohibited women from running races longer than 200 meters until 1960, so 32 years later.
That's interesting.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
that's
I mean,
I don't know. Sorry.
I was going to say, if you've ever done any research about the marathon, for a long time, women were prohibited from competing in the marathon as well, because it was thought that they were too delicate or unable to cope with the physical stress. And ironically, it's showing to be proven that once you start to get to ultra long distance running, women might actually have an advantage. So well done, Olympics. 4 years after the first modern one, you got women in. Not so good Olympics, taking them away from anything longer than a 200-meter race for 32 years. That's a bit awkward.
Well done. Moving forward into 1936. So that was the year that Berlin finally got its Olympics. Now, this was a tricky time because the Olympics at that time were organized by none other than Adolf Hitler. So that was, of course, during the reign of the Nazi Party. And what he wanted to do was use those Olympics as an event, as a way to spread his Nazi propaganda. Now, thankfully, he experienced a bit of a mental defeat when Jesse Owens, an African-American runner, won gold medals in the 100, 200, and 4 times 100 meter distances and set a world record in the long jump, 200 meter, and the 4 times 100 meter distances. So in your face, Hitler.
Just an amazing moment of, and I think especially poignant with what's going on in the world today, just
Yeah.
in terms of fighting for equality, fighting against tyranny and discrimination. I had this as an equal number 3, along with something we'll talk about in a little bit, what happened in Mexico City,
Okay.
where the American sprinters stood up. I think any time that the Olympics is such a metaphor for not just what's happening in the world of sports at the time that they occur, but also for the world of politics as well. And so I think in 1936 and 1968, we saw some real swings against racism and discrimination be made. And Jesse Owens is, probably more famous now for what he actually represented at that Berlin Olympics than what he actually did in the event. I'm sure a lot of people, I honestly didn't know that he had competed in the long jump in 1936. I knew that he'd ran, and I assumed that he'd won, but...
And to be honest, the only reason that I knew is there's a film, I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of the film was, but it's about the 1936 Olympics and about Jesse Owens, and just an incredible story. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You ask anybody who is Jesse Owens, and if they can probably tell you what he did in terms of what he stood for, but maybe they won't be able to tell you the distances that he covered. So that's an interesting part to me as well.
Yeah, it's when sometimes when someone does something so important, it transcends their athletic accomplishments, and this is definitely what Jesse did in 1936.
And you know what? I think that's it couldn't have happened at a better time for Hitler to be proven wrong in such a spectacular way.
Yeah.
So speaking of Hitler and World War II, we move on to 1940 and 1944. The Olympics were canceled due to World War II. Yeah, no postponement, just flat out canceled.
And I think I remember looking and seeing that originally they were intended to be held in, of all places, Japan and Italy. So 2 countries that were fighting on the sides of the Axis during that World War as well. So, because the Olympics are obviously planned out several years in advance. You don't just decide on the year where they're going to be done. And so we had Germany, Japan, and Italy, ironically, as the Olympic hosts for 3 years in a row. And 2 of those were just flat out cancelled because of World War II.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. Just the history with the Olympic Games is just so riddled with amazing things. Like when you look at some of the things that have happened in the world, you wonder how they even the Olympics didn't just kind of dissipate at some point. Heading into 1948, first Olympics is held in Switzerland after World War II, and that was the Winter Games. So we're back on, and schedules happening. In London, the Bob Mathias for the Summer Games becomes the youngest track athlete to win the decathlon. He was 17 years old.
Moving into do you count the decathlon as a track event? I mean, it's a bit of running, it's a bit of jumpy type stuff.
Yeah,
it's all over the place. They're amazing athletes,
I think they classify it as track and field, sort of, kind of, because it is just kind of that. Like,
it's
track it's all
and
of that.
Field, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because like all that stuff. 17, but now we have athletes regularly younger than that, which is amazing to me. 1952, we move into Finland. Now, Emil Satopek, I've mentioned him on the podcast before. I've mentioned this quote: if you want to run a mile. If you want to change your life, run a marathon. Emil Satopek becomes the only person to ever win the 5,000 meter, 10,000 meter, or 5 and 10K, and the marathon in the same Olympiad.
That's incredible.
Now, that's incredible to me because you think today you don't necessarily a strong 5K runner is generally not a strong marathon. Like they're in 2 different events. They don't really cross over.
A marathon runner can run a fast 5K, but you would never think that they would be at an Olympic level. An Olympic level is the best of the best of the best. It's just, it's incredible. I mean, to think that it has never been done since is incredible. To think that it was even done in the first place. If you have been in and around running for any period of time, you'll just realize how hard that is to actually do.
Just crazy. Moving into 1956 in Melbourne, Australia. Shout out. Barry Cuthbert becomes known as the Golden Girl of the Olympics, the first Australian to win 3 gold medals in one Olympiad, and the only athlete to win the 100, 200, and 400 meter gold at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, I think the Melbourne Olympics is still held up in Australian folklore as one of the great things that we ever did. And I know that when Sydney held the Olympics in 2000s, there was a lot of pressure, I think, to live up to what Melbourne had done, especially with having Betty Cuthbert be there as such a pinnacle for the games. But we'll hear about in 2000, we kind of had a repeat of that moment with a lightning rod athlete for the host country as well.
Yeah, yeah. Moving into 1960, women are allowed, staying on the female track, women are allowed to compete in speed skating for the first time.
So starting in the Winter Olympics, starting to get the equality come in there as well.
That's it.
And this is when the women would have been allowed to run longer, finally, than 200 meters.
That's a good point. So the longer than 200 meters comes into play. Moving into much longer than 200 meters into the marathon, Ethiopian runner Abebe Bikila wins the marathon, but get this, ladies and gentlemen, he wins it barefoot.
That's nuts. That's absolutely
insane.
Nuts.
I mean, I think in every marathon I've ever done, I've only done three, but in each one I've always seen somebody running barefoot, but they're not a fast runner. Yeah. They're not a fast runner by any means. Like nobody's no serious athlete you would think would be running this thing barefoot, but this dude won it barefoot.
Yeah, I'm sure people can run the marathon barefoot in a competitive time, but not competitive at an Olympic level. I mean, this is the thing. No. This is absolutely incredible to win it. I mean, shoe technology back in 1960, very different to what we have now, but still better than barefoot.
I mean, 1960, that's I think 1960 is when, or 1961 or something, that's when Nike was first developed, I think, out of the, two guys selling shoes out of their truck. And, that's when foot injuries and injuries from running all started. So I wonder what the correlation there is. So moving on to 1964, and this is something that you've got. Look at that.
So 1964 was when we were last in Tokyo, Japan for an Olympics. And this is where Abebe Bikila becomes the first person to win the men's Olympic marathon twice. So after winning it in 1960, he wins it again in 1964. And ironically, this is also the last Summer Olympics to use a cinder running track for the athletic events. So after this, they switched to a more technical, more modern rubber composite track that you see in athletics tracks today.
Do you mean like cinder block cinder?
Yeah, like little tiny bits of wood. So before that, they were running on like little cinder wood track type things because they were soft and they were compressed. This was the last time they did that at the Olympics. They moved to the synthetic material after this.
So not like fire cinders, not like running on fire coals?
No, hopefully not. Unless you're running really fast.
That's the Olympic event that I want to see.
Firewalking.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Moving on to 1968, Mexico City, Mexico. American sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos finish first and third in the 200-meter dash. And on the podium, they raised their fists in respect and support of the Black freedom movement, which, of course, is very, very poignant today with everything that's going on. That was one of the first, I think, stands for that movement, which I think is incredible. Amazing photos of it online if you ever get a chance to Google it.
The photo is incredible. I mean, I think Jesse Owens back in 1936 did it with his performance on the track. Tommy and John did it with a symbol of protest on the podium. I just could not split that and Jesse in my top 10 moments in terms of the impact that they had. I think they are up there in the top 3, both of them, of significant track moments. And ironically, Jesse's the performance on the track was impressive. This is what they did afterwards. The fact that they won the races they competed in is actually irrelevant. And I think they were stripped of their medals later as well.
I think they were too. I think I remember reading that, which is an absolute shame. Did they later on
reinstated, I believe.
Reinstate them?
Yeah, because there was an Australian who was actually finished second in that race, and he didn't do the Black Fist protest, but he wore a badge. And the interesting thing is that both Tommy and John, if you look at the photo, they're each raising a different fist because they had one pair of black gloves between them. So one put on a right black glove, one put on a left black glove, and they held up a right hand and a left hand each.
Okay. Very interesting.
Hmm.
Very interesting. Moving into 1972, Munich. Now, I don't remember this one. Was this yours?
This is mine. I'll chuck this one in. So we're
Okay.
back in Germany in 1972, and finally, after World War One being cancelled and 1936 being Hitler's coming out party, and then World War Two cancelling everything, Germany gets a chance to do the 20th Olympics right, and it didn't really go that well. The Munich Olympics, known for what happened when 8 Palestinian Black September terrorists
Mm.
kidnapped 11 Israelis in the Olympic Village. And ultimately, they killed all of them, and 5 of the terrorists were killed as well. So the event went on under those terrible circumstances. The Olympics, it's a place where everyone in the world comes together. It has the eyes of the world of it. And that means, when things happen, it is attractive to people who are wanting to make a protest. In some cases of Tommy and John, who we just spoke about, the protest was for good things. In this case, the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict spilled over into that actual event.
That's just, uh, I it breaks my heart when, I mean, it breaks my heart when any of this stuff kind of happens, but it's just an extra added thing, when you destroy an event like this, when people have been working, in some cases, their entire lives to get to it,
Mm.
it's, it really is heartbreaking. And, your yeah, your just thoughts go out to those people.
On the track, what happened was something was notable. So in the 100 meters event, it was actually ran without the favorites and current world champions. So the American sprinters, Eddie Hart and Ray Robinson, were they were scheduled to run in a qualifying heat to make the 100 meters final, and it was expected that they would win comfortably. In fact, they were the favorites for the overall event. But somehow their American sprint coach, a gentleman by the name of Stan Wright, had been given the wrong starting time. And what happened is that Eddie, Ray, and another athlete by the name of Robert Taylor were at ABC television headquarters, and they were watching what they thought were replays of the morning's heats, and
Mm.
realized in real time, as they saw their names there with, disqualified, that they were actually watching footage of the heat that they were meant to be in. So they went racing through the Olympic Village to try and get to the heats. Didn't make it. The third athlete, Robert Taylor, had to take off his warm-off jacket like literally seconds before getting into the blocks and the gun going to fire the heat. There was an enormous protest about it, but unfortunately they were not able to compete. And so that's a notable event where you actually didn't have the best in the world there. And they say if it had been something a little bit different, probably would have been a different result in that event, with one of Eddie or Ray probably taking the whole thing out.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Wow.
also what happened in 1972 for myself as a basketball fan, I know it's not on the track, but the USA lost to the Soviet Union in the most controversial game in international basketball history, where the end of the game was actually replayed 3 times until the Soviets won.
Really?
Yes, it was, yeah. The USA team refused their silver medals, and those silver medals remain in a vault in Switzerland to this day. They have just refused to take them.
Wow. Fair enough. Got to stick with your morals. Moving on, 1976. This one, I believe, is one of yours as well.
Yes, also in Montreal in Canada. So Lasse Viren of Finland in 1976 repeated in the 5,000 and 10,000 meters. So he became the first athlete to go back to back. So he, in 1972 in Munich, Lasse won the 5,000 and the 10,000. And then in 1976, he repeated in those events. Now, that's been done a couple of times, I believe, since then, but that was the first time it had happened.
Amazing. Again, going back to what I said before, how hungry these athletes are. I just did this in 1972. Do you know what? Maybe at the next one, I'll go back and do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. Just amazing. Moving on to 1980, Moscow, depending on where you are in the world. Soviet Union. Go for it.
So this was one known for the race between Britain's Steve Ovett and the world record holder Sebastian Coe. So Steve Ovett was a runner who thought that he had, quote, a 90% chance of winning the 1500 meters. He was very, very boastful after he'd won the 800 meters earlier in the Olympics, and he beat the world record holder Sebastian Coe. And he was convinced that he would not only win the 1500 meters race, but he would beat the world record by up to 4 seconds, which was a massive takedown. He'd won 45 straight 1500 meters races. since May 1977. And
Wow.
Sebastian Coe had only competed in 8 1,500-meter races to that date. And what happened is that Coe won the race with a dramatic finish in the final lap, and of it, with his 90% chance of winning, according to him, actually finished third. So he didn't even finish silver. He finished
Whoa.
third. Yeah.
Talk about an upset. Look at that. Moving on to 1984, Los Angeles, USA. Joan Benoit Samuelson wins the marathon with a time of 2 hours, 24 minutes, and 52 seconds. Now, when I did the research on this, I thought I misread it. It was she had surgery actually 17 days before the Olympic trials, when I read it as 17 days before the marathon itself. So I don't know if she took part in the trials. I would assume not.
No, she did.
But because
She had
so
to.
she did.
Yeah, so she had to compete in the trials to qualify for the Olympics. So
Right.
17 days
17
after
days after
surgery,
surgery.
she
And then,
she yeah
yeah.
she won the Olympic trials in a time of 2 hours 31, and then 3 months later she won the marathon in a time of 2 hours 24.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Okay, you have a knee surgery, and 2.5 weeks later, you're running a 2:31 marathon.
It's
Like,
insane.
are you
It's
kidding me?
when I was researching for this podcast, this instantly became one of my top 10 moments. I have this as number 9 in my most impactful moments.
Number
Firstly,
9.
well,
You must be really hard on these
there's a
things.
lot of good stuff coming. Spoilers.
Yeah, fair enough.
This was the first ever women's Olympic marathon, so they'd never done the
Yeah.
Olympic marathon for women before this date. So straight away, being the first one is impactful. But secondly, to come back from the surgery that you spoke about is just insane. Third, there's only 3 women who have gone faster than that. So she won the Olympics in the very first ever Olympic marathon in 2:24. Only 3 winners have ever gone faster than that over the next 32 years. So it was flat out just a really good time, coming less than 4 months after emergency knee surgery.
Oh, dude, I can't get over the fact that like 2.5 weeks later she's running at all. Like, much less a 2:31 marathon. Dude, I stubbed my toe and I don't run for like 7 months.
I put off going running if I feel hungry. So
Yeah.
it's incredible. She should be way more famous than she is. The fact that I had to, sort of discover her is the beauty of doing a podcast like this, because you get to learn so much stuff.
Yeah.
But also just, that is an inspirational story. Also,
sorry.
I was about to say, also probably another lesson again of runners are idiots who do stupid stuff when they're injured, like go and run marathons.
Sometimes it pays off. I was lucky enough to have heard about her through Marathon Training Academy a couple of years ago.
Had you?
I've just been fascinated ever since, because I think they did an episode. I don't think they interviewed her, but I'm pretty sure they did like an episode of milestone moments, and I think marathon moments, that is. And this would have been in there, and I remember hearing that, and I was just like, oh man, that's insane.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Totally. 1988, Seoul, South Korea. Take it away, number 7.
So 1988, Seoul, South Korea. I think this is the first Olympics where I really start to remember stuff myself. So I would have been about 9 years old at this point. And I remember 2 things from this Olympics. The first one was my number 7 moment on the track is just everything to do with the female athlete Flojo, Florence Griffith Joyner, who is considered to be the fastest women athlete of all time. She set an Olympic record at Seoul, South Korea, in the 100-meter dash, running a 10.62. And she also ran a 21.34 in the 200 meters to win that event. And that is a world record that stands to this day, so has not been beaten yet. And she also won gold at the events in the 4x100 meter relay, and then a silver in the 4x400. And that's really unusual, because when you look at a lot of these athletes who do the 100, 200 meter double, they do the 100 meter relay, but not a lot of them can go up to the 400. That's quite rare. So an absolutely dominant performance by Flojo, but she was known for her, big hair, big 80s hair, the long nails, the tight lycra, all the different eye makeup and everything. She was just an eye-catching, flashy, personal style who would have been, I think, beautifully at home today in the social media, Instagram, self-promoting type era. She was ahead of her time, probably by about 30 years or so. Of course, being a African-American woman who's drawing that much attention to her, there was a lot of backlash about that, with a lot of people saying, hey, that's not what we want from our athletes. But she was strong and confident,
Yeah.
and sort of living her best life.
Which
But
is, I mean, just the fact that there was backlash. I mean, this is only 30 years ago. That's really shitty. I mean, you know what? I, that sucks. It's just amazing to me how far we've not come in the past, however many millions of years that humans have been on or 6,000 years that the world existed. I'm not going to get into a religious debate with
yeah,
anybody, but I'll say it right now. I believe in evolution, but it's just amazing to me how far we've not come.
exactly.
In some ways we've come very far. In some ways we just haven't.
Yeah, exactly.
We just haven't.
But Seoul, South Korea, 1988. Anything else could have happened on the track that year, but it was overshadowed by one of my top two, number two in terms of moments on the track in the Olympics. This was where Ben Johnson ran his 9.79 for the 100 meters to beat Carl Lewis, and then the world exploded. I just don't think you can understand, listening to it 30 years later. This was the social media generation before we had social media. The amount of round-the-clock press coverage, the news articles, as it came out that he had tested positive to a banned substance, and the suspicion going back over the years leading up to the Olympics, and then the fallout from it. I mean, he was, to see on the track, we had not seen a man look like him at the 100 meters track before.
No.
We had Carl Lewis, who next to him looked like a very lean, very fine, almost like a gazelle type runner. And then Ben Johnson came out and he was just muscle, power,
jacked as
explosive, just an absolutely phenomenal athlete. And 9.79 if it had been official, is a world record that would have lasted for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
In the end, it lasted for a couple of days.
Which is insane. I used to think, do you remember the movie Cool Runnings?
Yes.
And there's a part where John Candy says, there's a couple of these guys that can run the 110 seconds flat. I don't care who you are. That's lightning. Yeah. And I never really understood. Like, I always thought, 100 meters in 10 seconds, surely that can't be too hard. And then I became a runner, and I realized just how shitty that is to try.
It is incredibly hard. I think my PB was like trying to get under like 18 seconds is tough.
Yeah, dude, it's ridiculous.
It's incredible. But he was, I mean, I must have seen that footage of that 1988 100 meters finals 100 times in my life. It still gives me goosebumps today to see him, Ben Johnson, in the blocks. It looks like lightning is coming off him. He is just vibrating so much energy.
I tell you what, man, it's just incredible to watch. And again, if you have a chance to Google some of this stuff, just Google some of these guys running. It's just an amazing, their strides, their form. It's just incredible. It's an art form to watch. It's beautiful to watch. So there you go. 1992, Barcelona, Spain, which marks the last year that the Winter Olympics being held in the same year as the Summer Olympics, as they shifted to alternate 4-year cycles from 1994. Which I believe wasn't.
Go ahead.
What? No, I was going to say this isn't something that I looked up. I think I just stole your fact. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Honestly, nothing happened at 1992 Olympics for me. It was all about the dream team in basketball. That's all I cared about. Like,
I remember. I had a dream team jersey.
Everyone had.
I remember those.
Jersey.
Yeah, dude, the red, white, and blue ones. Those were cool.
So I'm sure people did something exciting on the track in Barcelona, but man, whatever. You had Jordan Barkley and Magic Johnson on the same team. That's all.
Oh, dude, that was it, man. Holy hell. Moving into 1996, funny, personal for me, 1996, the Atlanta, Georgia Olympics. This was the first sort of apparel for the Olympics that I remember owning. I had the hat, I had a shirt, I had shorts that all had the logos on them, and those were my favorite things at the time.
Did it have the dorky mascot on it?
No, I don't think so. It actually is really cool. It was like really epic and really. What was the mascot?
Oh, it was some sort of springy type thing. Olympic mascots are never bad.
Yeah,
and they're never good. I mean,
never good.
No, never good. It's always bad. Except for in Sydney where we had just like the platypus and the koala and all that sort of stuff because we couldn't go too obscure. We just had to go straight down the line of Australiana with them.
Yeah. They should have made all the Olympic rings into boomerangs.
They probably should have, yeah. But 1996 Atlanta, obviously quite sad because once again the Olympics was a flashpoint for a terrorist event or terrorist impact.
The Olympics, they were bombed, leaving 2 dead, 111 injured.
Mm.
Tough time, really tough time. Again, it just breaks my heart. When people have, when you think of an Olympic athlete going to the Olympics, you just can imagine how excited they are. I mean, I know that there's that um, culture in sports and young athletes, especially where it's all about that. It's all about that. Maybe they resent it, maybe, but I'm sure that there are plenty of athletes out there that get to the Olympics and they're like, holy my God in heaven,
Mm.
I'm here. And to have it tarnished by something like that, just really sad.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fallout, I think, from what was the circumstances behind that bombing. People getting, I remember there was a
Yeah.
security guard who was suspected for a longer period of time, and he was sort of, chased down. It was just, again,
Yeah.
one of those ones that kind of dominates what was happening out on the track. And meanwhile, out on the track, we had Michael Johnson winning the 400-meter event and also establishing a new world record in the 200-meter event. And Michael Johnson, you were talking before, Andrew, about technique. He radically changed the style of what we saw for running in those distance events. I remember people talking about the fact that he was someone who was taking many, many more steps than runners at the time. I think
Yeah.
he was like, had increased the cadence of his steps by
And
20%
taking
or
smaller
so.
steps too. Yeah.
Lots of small steps. And he almost had like an upright running style where he was
Yeah.
sitting in a running chair. And it just looked so different. I think nowadays we kind of see it a lot more on the track, but Michael Johnson was revolutionary. And to go out there and do that 200, 400 and have the focus on him, he was Usain Bolt before Usain Bolt, in my mind.
Yeah.
I think we had
Yeah.
that much impact at that event.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And it's interesting that that's now kind of like the accepted, when you talk to somebody about running technique, cadence is important. Smaller steps, keeping your feet under your body, really important to prevent injury. Very interesting that wasn't really the case until kind of recently when you think about it.
Yeah, that was transformative for me. So I think I was at that point where I was starting to get into running a little bit. I would have been in my late teens at that point, and I was starting
Yeah.
to run a little bit more. And so having these people break down, and what it's like with the Olympics, people takes a little thing and turn it into 4 days worth of news. To see this entire world just break down this, because people were saying that his running style would not work. They said there's no way he can win these events because you need to do these long strides. Like you want to take as few strides as possible. Why would you waste time and energy by taking many strides? Whereas Michael's whole thing was like, if I've got my feet under me and I'm pushing off more often, I'm going to be putting more power into the ground. I'm going to be carrying myself further. And so he completely transformed the science. So it was really impactful for me as a developing runner to start realizing that you can learn a lot about running, not by running, but actually by reading and researching and trying different things.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. 2000 Sydney Olympics, Sydney, Australia. We're back in Australia. Cathy Freeman wins the 400-meter event, celebrating and pushing for unity as she holds up the Australian and Aboriginal flags together.
Where were you, Andrew, when the 2000 Olympics were on?
2000, I was still in the States. Was I 16? Yeah, I was 16. I was in high school.
15, and what did you take from it? Because as an Australian, it was massive.
I don't think I really understood it because as an American, as a young American, really not knowing much other than Crocodile Dundee, right? I always thought Australians and Aboriginals just kind of, they were just, I basically thought Australians and Aboriginals were the same people because, that's all I knew about Australia was not anything, was nothing. And so I don't think I really understood it, but looking back now and actually have been living here for over a decade now, it's totally different, totally different. It's just, again, one of those things where, I guess you would liken it in the States to the Native Americans and the Americans living there now, same sort of thing. People, the Europeans that come in, they take what they want, give nothing back kind of thing. And so I didn't really get it. But now just I can only imagine the controversy, the impact, whether it's positive or negative at the time would have been insane.
I think it was, Australians love to be winners. We love to be winners in the field of sports. We love to be this small island country that puts out, as many medal winners per capita as many of the, the bigger countries that have more population and more money. The Olympics, the Sydney Olympics were massive in terms of the fact that it was regarded as such a successful event. But the amount of pressure that Cathy Freeman had on her going into that event, lighting or being part of the opening ceremony and the torch lighting, and then going out and running her event in that kind of suit with the hood and the long
Yeah.
sleeves and everything. So at that
Yeah.
time, Australian swimmers were having a lot of success in the water with these full body swimsuits. And so people kind of went, well, why don't we put our athletes in that as well? And so on the track, you had, the rest of the women's field was in singlets and shorts, and Cathy was in this tight hoodie type thing, and
It's like a
the long
bathing suit.
sleeves, like a bathing
Yeah.
suit, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're running now more often than not.
They are,
Bathing, like
it makes theory, like,
it's
compressed,
aerodynamic,
aerodynamic.
Yeah.
But she stood out, and so to go out there with, I mean, if she had not won, I don't know what would have happened. The fact that she did win must have been such a relief. I cannot imagine what it would have been like to be her to run with that pressure, like literally the weight of a country on her shoulders.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the 60s Olympics where, I think these athletes, they know what they want to go out there and stand for. For them, it's not just, I want to go out and win a medal for my country. It's, I want to stand for something, some kind of unity, some kind of call to action, some kind of something. And I think that gives them, in their mind, they don't have any choice but to win so that they can get this message across. And I think that gives them that extra edge. And, God bless them. I think I'm so glad that these things were able to be done. I mean, yeah, if she didn't win, Cathy Freeman, and that statement doesn't happen.
Exactly right. So Cathy out on the track won the 400-meter event. Also in the women's track, Marion Jones, the Belizean American athlete, just went crazy. She was winning everything in the 100 and 200-meter events. She won 3 gold medals and 2 bronze medals on the track at the Summer Olympics, but was later stripped of her medals after admitting to steroid use. And this was an enormous one. This was when I think we had access now to what we commonly think of as the modern media cycle, where rather than waiting for books to be written or waiting for newspapers to be published, things were starting to get out online. And this is where I think that story and people starting to really understand the systemic problem that the Olympics had with drugs. We'd seen back in the 80s with the German swimming teams and a lot of stuff in the water being involved. But this was when I think the track really started to get the focus of drug use, especially coming after just 12 years after Ben Johnson getting suspended for his male event. I think everyone kind of thought naively, well, the women wouldn't be doing that. Maybe the men would be taking all these drugs, but the women wouldn't. Meanwhile, the West German women's team in the pool in the 80s were notorious for those sorts of things. And so Marion Jones was like, again, another lightning rod for drugs in the Olympics. And I think the first one where they really went hard and stripped the athlete of the medals so quickly after the event when she was proven to be found guilty. And she fought that for a long time, and there was a whole bunch of court cases and denials, and it was this, it was that. It was just, and it all played out, I think, for the first time in the public's eye.
Oh, wow. Do you know, any of this stuff, any of these milestones, like I would watch a movie about.
Exactly. It's incredible, isn't
like
it?
Just listening to that, I would watch a movie about that. Maybe there is one that I don't know about, but like all of this stuff, like, man, make movies about this stuff. Yeah. If you're in Hollywood and listening, if you can film, make movies about this stuff.
And it goes back to one of my moments I spoke about before. So it was when Flojo in the 80s was competing, she had a very different physique to a lot of the other women that were racing. And so people accused her of being a doper as well. Now, she attributes it to being one of the first women athletes to go, you know what, I should probably think about lifting for power. What sort of running am I trying to do here? I'm trying to really propel myself forward. So she credits it to doing a lot of squats, a lot of strength training, which was not that usual for women athletes at the time. But there was a bunch of controversy about Flojo, and she actually died quite young for an athlete. She was only in her late 30s when she passed away. And I think when Marion came along and went through, again, a completely different physique, and dominated on the track so well, we're never going to escape. I think when you've got the Olympics carrying so much prestige, there are going to be people who are going to look for that extra advantage, be it drugs or illegal performance enhancers, to try and get that extra 1%.
Yeah. Look at Lance Armstrong, right?
Yep, exactly.
Man, that was a shocker. Yeah. Anyway. Moving forward, the next couple are yours, I believe.
So 2004, Yeah, we went back to Athens, Greece. Anniversary of, I don't know, there was some date to do with it, but we were back in Greece for some reason. And the marathon, the actual event that we love so much, was held on the same route of the 1896 Games. So that first modern Olympics, the marathon followed the same route. That was also notorious for Paula Radcliffe in the women's marathon. Was the strong favourite, the British runner, to go out there and win that event. And she bombed. She hit the bonk, the wall, whatever it was, crashed out spectacularly. I think it was the Japanese runner Mizuki Nagochi to win the gold in that event. Meanwhile, in the men's event, this was interesting. With less than 10 kilometres to go and leading the race, Brazilian runner Vanderlei Cordeiro de Lima was attacked by an Irish priest. So Irish priest Neil Horan jumped out of the crowd and grabbed Vanderlei and dragged him back into the crowd. And De Lima managed to get out from the crowd and recovered to take the bronze medal, but probably should have won the gold medal. But he was awarded the Pierre de Coubertin Medal for Sportsmanship, who, of course, is the founder of the modern Olympic, whose name we mispronounced before and I mispronounced again just now.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we don't know. Maybe one of us got it right.
Statistically, there's a chance we did. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. So interesting.
Wow. Okay. So
two interesting things in the Athens Marathon.
An Irish priest drags a marathoner out of. It sounds like the beginning of a joke.
I don't know why he did it. Was he trying to make a symbol? Was he drunk? Was he trying to? I don't think he the chances of an Irish
kind of racist that you assume that he was drunk just because he's Irish.
Well, I'm just trying to work out that the chances of an Irish priest having a personal vendetta against a Brazilian marathon runner, doesn't compute to me. So I'm thinking there was something else happening there.
Yeah, right. I got to look into that because I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun. Good for everyone. There's your basketball factoid again. Go for it.
Yeah, America lost in the basketball again in 2004. So,
what do you have against America, man? What's with you in the racism today?
Hey, no, listen, I live vicariously through the American Olympic team. And after 1992 in Barcelona, to have them lose again, 12 years later, just didn't make a whole bunch of sense. You would have thought after watching the 1992 Olympics that America was never going to lose a game by less than 50 points. And
do you know why? It's because, do you remember the Harlem Globetrotters?
Yes.
I feel like all they need to do is bring the Harlem Globetrotters to the Olympics because they're not a competitive team, obviously, but if you bring them to the Olympics, they're not losing.
Okay.
Ever.
The Washington Generals they play against, quote unquote, paid to lose. They don't actually, those games are scripted.
You're scripted.
I'm not scripted at all. If I was scripted, this podcast would be a lot better.
That's a good point. Whatever, man. Just shut up. I'm going to move on.
Move on.
Man. Shut up. Just shut up. I don't like your logic.
2008.
Beijing, China. Here we go. Our boy Usain Bolt.
Ooh. I'm still recording, but I think I've lost Andrew. Where's he gone? He's frozen. He's looking quite awkward right now.
Are you frozen or are you just taking that in?
No, you were frozen.
Oh, you were frozen.
Well, the recording will show that you were frozen, so that's the
it'll show that you were also frozen. So
okay. Well, maybe let's go back.
Okay.
2008.
Usain Bolt wins his first Olympic gold medal and breaks the world record for the 100-meter sprint at 9.69 seconds, and I have deja vu.
Incredible. The Beijing Olympics were firstly just over the top because Beijing went and spent a truckload of money. But this was the start of, spoilers, for me, the lead up to the greatest moment ever in track in the Olympics, which was Usain winning his first 4x100 meter relay, 200 meters, and the 100 meter sprint, all in the one Olympics. But unfortunately, it later turned out, in 2017, 9 years after this Olympics, Usain Bolt was stripped of his 4x100 relay gold from Beijing because his teammate Nesta Carter was found guilty of a doping violation. And so that means for a while he had the triple of the 100 meters, 200 meters, and 4x100, all in different events. But he lost that. So, yeah.
Bummer. tough. And that's only because his teammate was, you know,
Yeah.
that sucks. But, 2012, London, Mo Farah. This isn't mine. Sorry, you go.
So well, it's okay. You can talk about these ones. That's fine. I'm happy for
No,
you
no,
to
I'm
talk.
afraid to talk about your stuff.
Well,
I don't
Mo
wanna-
Farah. So Mo Farah, the great track athlete in that middle distance, won the 5,000 meter and 10,000 meter double, which has been done a couple of times. But again, in London, UK, a British athlete going out and winning that. And we've spoken before how hard it is to run a 5K or a 10K fast. Like he
Yeah.
must have just been going flat out, and to pull up and win them both again back to back is just incredible.
Redonkulous.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Usain wins the 100 meters, 200 meters, and 4x100 meters again. And as an Australian, I have to point out that Jared Talent won the 50-kilometer walk. There you go, walk fans. We spoke about it at least once during the podcast.
Wait, is there a 50K walk in the Olympics?
Yeah, there's a 50K walk in the Olympics. It kind of follows the marathon course, but then goes a little bit extra.
Like there's a walking event in the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. The walking event's a big deal. They have, the judges have little paddles. And so if
I
they
watched-
detect you
I
running,
don't
they
know
hold up a
this.
paddle, and you get 3 warnings. If you get a 4th warning, you're out. There was one, I think at one of the Olympics, there was a female athlete who was disqualified as she was coming into the stadium. So she'd
Sure.
done the entire event, but she missed a judge signaling to her like 10 kilometers earlier that she'd been disqualified. So as she came into the stadium thinking she was going to win, they pulled her aside and said, "You're disqualified now," because she'd been running during the event.
Oh,
But
man.
She broke down at the entrance and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Is that a new event? I swear to God, I've never watched it.
Oh, no.
Or
I think
heard about it.
Well, it's been there since at least 2012 when an Australian
right.
won it. So, yeah.
That's fair enough. Okay, there you go. Moving on to 2016. This one is my personal favorite in Rio in Brazil. A true example of camaraderie and support is shown when U.S. runner Abby DiCastino helps New Zealand runner Nikki Hamblin cross the finish line after injuring herself in a collision. So basically, these are a collision in the race, not a car collision or anything. These are two opposing countries, well, competing countries, and one country is just helping the other across the line. You know what? That's my favorite thing. That's my favorite one that we've spoken about because it's so symbolic and just, what I love about the running community is that camaraderie, that loyalty, that helping hand. And, it kind of reminds me of that scene in Rocky IV, at the end when he's like, if I can change and you can change and we all can change. And it's like one of those moments where it's like, you know what? If two countries can do this for each other, I don't know. It's naive, but what the hell?
Yeah, the Olympics brings out a bunch of terrible things that we've spoken about, but it also can bring out some wonderful moments of humanistic behavior. And hopefully she won that sportsmanship medal that we spoke about earlier for that. In 2016, Rio in Brazil, big one for me. So Eliud Kipchoge won his marathon gold medal. And that was, I think, the cherry on the top of the sundae for him to be the greatest marathon runner of all time, to have an Olympic gold. I think you need to have an Olympic gold medal for your case to be unassailable. I think there's just something about the prestige of the Olympics that you need to have that on your resume.
I mean, it'd be weird. He's the fastest marathoner in the world. If he didn't have a gold medal, it's like,
Yeah, but I mean, there's no guarantee. I mean, the Olympics is every 4 years. You have to, as we've spoken about as an elite marathon runner, time your races around that to make sure you don't peak so early. It's not what he'll be remembered for. No one will ever remember his Olympic gold medal as the first thing. It will be his dominance in the Berlin Marathon over the last couple of years. It'll be the world record he had there 2 years later in 2018. But of course, it's the first thing that's going to be mentioned in his obituary or whatever is going to be the fact that he was the first person to go under 2 hours in Vienna, Austria. And that's what makes him the greatest marathoner of all time. There will be a faster runner. There will be a better athlete in the future, but he will absolutely be the greatest marathon.
But there will never be
time.
another first.
He was first, yeah. And that kind of segues into the top 10 moment, number one moment I've ever seen on the track in the Olympics was absolutely Usain Bolt doing that 3 Olympics, 3 100 meters plus the 200 meters. I just don't know. Does that make him the greatest athlete of all time, having done that? Or is he just the best? Like, where would you put Usain Bolt up against Carl Lewis, who was also an excellent runner on the track, but then also had the ability to go do the long jump? And when he was a junior, competed in high jump as well. I don't know. Carl Lewis set the bar back in the 80s for the track and field and made it popular. Perhaps he's the greatest athletics athlete.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to what you were just saying about Eliud Kipchoge. There will be faster runners, of course, but he's the greatest because he's done so many things for the sport. I mean, obviously Usain Bolt has as well, in comparison to Carl Lewis. But yeah, it's just, I mean, there's so many things that you can take into account. I think it's hard. It really is hard. You're right to name like a greatest athlete and anything because there's so much that these people do.
Yeah.
It's
There's
just hard.
impact to promote the sport and also, I guess, set the scene for people to come after them. So I think we do give a little bit of emphasis to the first to do stuff. But yeah, saying just absolutely that. And that was just, again, another one where I'm going to say the whole world stopped to watch that, to see, could he actually do it? Could he win the 100 meters? Because going into the 2016 Olympics, he hadn't had great form. He'd lost a couple of races. He'd finished seconds and third, but he was just saving himself. He is a man who is just spectacularly unafraid of the moment and just wanted to do it on that big stage. So, feels like he was using the years leading up to that Olympics just as a warm-up. And we're talking about 12 years. We're talking about dominating the 100 meters event over 8 years, as it turns out. Just incredible endurance as well. So, yeah, for me, that's my number one moment on the Olympics track is Usain Bolt. Yeah.
Amazing. Love it. Well, that now brings us to 2020, Tokyo, Japan, the Olympics that are to be continued.
So, I mean, they'll be in 2021. They'll give us the exact date for it. We'll still call it the 2020 Olympics. I don't know what that means for the entire track and field calendar, though. Like, what does that do for the World Championships, which are held every other year? Like, they kind of sit in between the Olympics and everything. So you've got World Championships that need to shift around now.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just it kind of to what you were talking about with elites before. That year, that'll throw off schedules for a lot of people because they know that they're training for the Olympics in 20, then they have a year to train for the next thing, so on and so forth. And now moving the Olympics to a year, you're going to probably see athletes who would have done really well in certain things now either defer to something else or just not perform maybe as well as they had hoped because they have now events that are closer together than they had originally planned if they don't try to make up for it, I guess.
Yeah. And I assume the Olympics will still be in 2024. Like, they're not going to suddenly now change the cadence of the Olympics and move it to odd years, I imagine.
No, well, I would imagine if they're still labeling it as the 2020 Olympics, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna.
So then it'll be 3 years between Olympics.
Interesting. First time ever.
Yeah. One to which I was looking forward to. I went and read a whole bunch of articles about the Tokyo Olympics that were written as if they were going to happen, and I found myself absolutely excited to watch a lady by the name of Shawnee Miller-Ubu from the Bahamas, who was basically going to be the female version of Michael Johnson, who won the 200 and 400 meters in Atlanta. She was going to do it again. And she had a big chance of doing it. And they were trying to work out how it was going to work because the schedule for her events was going to be a little bit tricky. And so she was going to have to run one event and really follow up on another. And I was reading about all this sort of stuff. And I was like, I can't wait to see this when it happens. And then I realized the whole thing's been cancelled and I need to wait another year now to see if it'll happen. So, but that's the beauty is that, the Olympics are so magical. Even an Olympics that didn't go ahead got me excited to hear the story about this athlete, Shawnee, who I've never heard of before. And I will be absolutely trying to track her a year from now when Tokyo does go ahead.
Awesome. Gives us a lot to look forward to, really a lot to look forward to. It will certainly be, hopefully by the time that these Olympics happen, we have that vaccine that we're all hoping for. Hopefully things have gotten back to some semblance of a normal life again. It'll be really interesting to see what the next year kind of shows.
Yeah, possibly they will also learn a lot from sports that are happening right now. And, the concept of the Olympics in a bubble may not be that strange. I mean, the Olympic Village is already set up where everyone lives there. I think the important thing with these bubble sports, the ones that are working properly, is that you need to make sure people quarantine properly as they go in and having no exceptions whatsoever if someone does leave the bubble. But
No.
maybe it's a situation where, we have an Olympic village and it's just locked down. You go into the Olympic village, coaches, athletes, support staff, and it is you're there 3 weeks before the event, and there's no spectators, and we can still run the event. It might be that's how we have to do it. But I just, I hope they don't have to cancel it altogether.
No.
I would love to see the Tokyo Olympics. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially since, as we spoke about, these cities spend so much money setting up for these events. So we saw, Rio just 4 years ago spent so much money on that event, and now a lot of that has fallen into disrepair and has been abandoned. Tokyo, I think, would be devastated if it spent probably billions of dollars and then never actually got the event.
Absolutely. I think we'll get there. I think we'll get there.
Fingers crossed.
Knock on wood. Indeed. Well, I think we talked about a lot today. That's a lot
probably
for
missed
everybody.
So much as well.
Oh, dude, I have no doubt. We, like we said at the beginning of the episode, if there are things that you want us to talk about, shoot us a message. Because there are so many things that, like I said, when I was researching, I can probably speak for Zach when he was, so many things that we wanted to put in. I mean, I put in personally a lot of things, but I only took a handful of things out of that we talked about. So there's a lot of other things that we could have gone into, but
there's a lot of these moments you could do a whole episode just on. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, shout out in the comments and the feedback on Facebook or against the podcast. Remember, if you're listening to the podcast, go and give it a review, 5 stars, thumbs up. I don't know what it is. Click the little purple like button, subscribe, so that you can learn when new podcasts are coming out. And yeah, we look forward to talking to you next time.
Absolutely. Then do you have anything else? Do we have anything else? I think we got everything covered.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, then I've been Andrew.
I've been Zach.
And this has been the podcast that hopes to inspire you to go above and beyond what you ever thought possible. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Before we cut, I reckon we should insert. I'm going to do a little ad read, which I reckon you should insert at some point after we talked about the doping.
Okay. Cool.
So just play off me here.
All righty. Nervous.
You know what I don't understand, Andrew?
What's that?
Why do these athletes go and take performance-enhancing drugs when the secret to performance is right there? It's Generation UCAN. It's the smarter energy nutrition that is powered by superstarch, a slow-release complex carbohydrate that uniquely delivers steady, long-lasting energy to keep you fueled and feeling good. I feel good because they're our sponsor. You feel good when you use their product. Why aren't these athletes onto it?
I don't know. Like, I'm talking, dude, I would never feel like I needed to take anything illegal to keep my performance as best as possible when I have Generation UCAN by my side, because they are the company that helps you utilize that fat as fuel to keep you from hitting that wall, to make sure that you're constantly hitting that prime and perfect performance.
You know what, folks? It's so good, it might as well be illegal. It's not, but it could be. It's that good.
Indeed. It's totally that good. Chocolate peanut butter is my favorite in terms of the snack bars, which I use, of course, and the protein-enriched powder, either flavor, any of them are great. You want to head over to generationucan.com.au, check out a full list of their supplies, their lines, how you can use them, and you can use the coupon code Breaking the Barrier for 15% off your first purchase.
That's Generation UCAN, the best choice for steady energy.
Boom.
Cool. Done. Awesome.
Nice. Attaboy.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.